The story takes place in the kingdom of Laner, part of the Oran Empire. A teacher was explaining to her students that, with proper concentration, they would be able to sense the magic around them. However, one of the students was skeptical. He felt frustrated to be there, learning the basics of magic with children, when he should have already advanced further. This young man is the protagonist of the story, named Lin Lanster. For 8 years, he has been trying to learn magic at the most basic level, while other children his age have already mastered simple spells. Lin, on the other hand, cannot even perceive the magical particles in his surroundings. Even so, Lin cannot afford to give up. He has a mission. He needs to become a sage-level mage to discover an important truth. While he was reflecting on this, he was suddenly hit by something. A boy came running up to Lin, apologizing and claiming that he got carried away with the practice of magic. However, Lin knew that it had been intentional. The boy was mocking him for being a noble who couldn't use magic. The boys continued to taunt Lin, but he could not retaliate. In this world, nobles are expected to have powerful and dominant magical abilities. As the taunting continued, a knight intervened. Lin asked the knight to lower his sword, which he promptly did, giving the children the opportunity to flee. Lin then explained to the knight that his sword should not be used against commoners. The knight apologized and explained the reason for his visit. Lin had received a letter from a man named Mr. Oliver. Mr. Oliver was the man who hid Lin after the tragic accident that took his parents' lives. He also knew of Lin's difficulty with magic and had been helping him since then. After the conversation, Lin returned to the mansion where he lived. There, he was greeted by Blin Lannister, his mother's older brother. Lin called him father, as they were hiding the real Lin from something dangerous. The two went to the study room, where they read Mr. Oliver's letter. Blin used his magic on a paper bird, which then began to speak. The bird said that there was something that could help Lin finally learn magic. It then conjured a magical book and handed it to Lin. As he held the book, Lin remembered the countless times he had tried to learn magic without success. Now, he wondered if this time would be different. Blin noticed the sadness on Lin's face and tried to cheer him up, saying that he could continue living there and pretending to be his son for as long as he needed. The truth is that Lin was abandoned by his father and has since carried the responsibility of becoming a sage-level mage to uncover the mysteries of his past. However, Lin believed that something had happened because his father loved him very much and would not have abandoned him without reason. This thought gave him even more determination to learn magic. Later that night, while lying in bed, Lin looked at the magic book and remembered his childhood. His father was not always home, but he always brought something to cheer Lin up when he returned. This memory was of the last time Lin saw his father. Supposedly, it would be his father's final expedition before the family could spend more time together, but he never returned, and his mother also disappeared. Lin was left alone and realized that the only way to understand what had happened was to learn magic. Now, he hopes the book can help him achieve his goal. Determined to try once more, Lin began to meditate. Blue auras started to surround him, but with his eyes closed, he didn't notice anything. Lin thought he had failed again, but suddenly he saw orbs around him and realized that he could finally sense the magic. This renewed his hopes and made him very happy. However, something strange happened. He started shaking violently, feeling like his body was about to explode. Lin knew he couldn't let that happen and gathered all his strength to resist. Suddenly, everything went dark. He was transported to an unknown place, and while trying to figure out how to get out of there, he felt something in his hands. Lin found a red egg, and as he held it, a notification appeared. A system introduced itself as Lin's butler and explained that it had been waiting for him for about 10 years. The system also informed him that this place belonged to Lin and was called Dragon Rent. Lin was transported again, this time to a small island. He began processing the information he had received and immediately thought of the dangerous dragon that might be linked to the egg. The system confirmed that the egg was a dragon's and that this would be Lin's first dragon. The butler explained that Lin would need to raise the dragon before he could return to his world. Lin was irritated because he knew that raising a dragon was an immense task, and he feared being devoured by it. Over time, the egg began to hatch. The butler warned Lin that he needed to spill some blood on the egg, or the dragon would indeed eat him alive. With no other option, Lin bit his thumb and pressed his hand against the egg, which was about to open. A beam of red light appeared above the egg, and the system informed him that the bonding process had been successful. A baby red dragon emerged, and Lin could hardly believe that this tiny creature would one day become the most fearsome being in the world. The dragon's eyes were still covered by fragments of the eggshell, and it ended up bumping into Lin's knees. The protagonist helped the dragon remove the remaining shell from its head. However, the baby dragon got annoyed, not wanting to be touched by a human, and kicked Lin in the face. At that moment, Lin had confirmation that this creature was indeed a dragon. A series of notifications appeared, informing Lin that he had earned 1 gold and 5 experience points for having his first dragon. In the game, gold is equivalent to real-world gold and can be used to expand the ranch. A new quest appeared, asking Lin to create a fire habitat for the dragon. While navigating through the system, the little dragon continued to complain, refusing to accept anything from Lin. The fire habitat cost 100 gold, and Lin decided to buy it. He placed it on the small island, and as soon as it was built, he received an additional 5 experience points and 50 gold. This fire habitat allows the fire dragon to level up once per day and offers a limit of 500 gold per day, enabling the fire dragon to grow 1 level per day. He immediately dove into the lava, and since the only thing he could say was Ano, Lin decided to name him that. Shortly after Ano received his habitat, he fell asleep. Lin then decided to carry out more tasks suggested by the system. He set up some fruit farms to feed Ano. Since Lin had already completed the tutorial, he could leave the ranch with a simple gesture. Lin was slowly transported back to his world, and his body fell onto the bed. When he woke up, he found 3 people looking at him, all with worried expressions. Lin asked why they were in his room, and they told him they saw him floating on the ceiling. Lin had broken the ceiling but was confused as to why they seemed so happy. Mr. Blin revealed that Lin had released a very powerful magical energy while he was unconscious. Incredulous, Lin tried to use magic again, and to his surprise, it worked. He believed this was thanks to the book Mr. Oliver had given him. While the other 2 celebrated, Lin interrupted them. He asked Mr. C to follow the book's instructions to cultivate magic, but Mr. C couldn't sense anything, just like Uncle D. It was then that Mr. Blin found out about the ranch, and Lin realized he was the only one who could access that place. Every time he tried to tell someone about the ranch, the system prevented him. Lin tried cultivating magic again, but his body still couldn't handle the magical energy, and he continued to cough up blood. The system then informed Lin that his magic level was directly linked to his dragon's level. Since Ano wasn't yet at level 1, Lin couldn't use magic. If he absorbed more magical power, his body might explode. Lin tried to avoid returning to the ranch, but soon notifications started appearing. Ano's food supply was quickly running out. The system even scolded him for being an irresponsible farmer. His uncle noticed something was wrong since Lin stopped eating. Lin then made up an excuse, saying he had lost his appetite. His uncle also told him that he planned to send him to St. Iris Magic Academy. This was the most prestigious academy in the Oran Empire, where Mr. Oliver was the vice-rector. It was also where Lin's father graduated, and Lin was happy to have the chance to study there. But then, new warnings appeared. Ano's health was below 10%, in critical condition. If Ano died, Lin would have to turn into a dragon egg to make up for this loss, which panicked Lin. He had no idea that was even possible. From that moment on, our protagonist started feeding Ano daily. Ano's appetite was enormous, and he soon leveled up. Lin tried to make a friendly gesture, but Ano didn't like it. He didn't want anyone touching his head. The system informed Lin that he was becoming a qualified farmer. Now that his fire dragon had reached level 1, Lin could finally use magic. Additionally, he unlocked a new feature called the training room. Lin was transported to this room, where he was given the task of meditating while maintaining a specific position. He needed to balance himself correctly to avoid being hit by a 40-ton hammer, but as expected, Lin lost his balance and was struck. The plank trapped his feet, preventing him from escaping the training. His first challenge was to meditate for more than 5 seconds, and Lin was already struggling to keep his balance. As time passed, the challenge became more difficult. He continued meditating on top of these obstacles. After some time, a notification informed him that he had completed the training session. Lin proceeded with the training, and 7 days passed. He then decided to try using his magical perception. A magic circle appeared in his hands, and shortly afterward, he cast a small fireball. The protagonist was a little disappointed because the amount of magic was still small. He then decided to extinguish the fire before anyone saw it. But at that moment, he spotted a boy named Jack, who was with Mr. C and Mr. Blin when Lin began floating last time. Jack ran back to the mansion to tell everyone that his master had used magic. Lin tried to stop him, embarrassed by the size of his small fireball, but then, something unexpected happened. The fire magic almost hit Jack. Lin realized that his fire magic had strengthened. With this, he decided to practice his skills more. Lin continued chasing Jack, who was running for his life. On that same day, Mr. Blin received an acceptance letter from St. Iris Academy. His uncle immediately told Lin, and both were happy. After some preparations, Lin was ready to travel to the academy, and everyone bid him farewell. Now, he was officially beginning his journey to become a mage. The journey would take at least a month. During the day, Jack led the convoy to the academy, and at night, Lin used the time to train. While he was focused on his training, Lin didn't realize how much Ano had grown. Charmander had now become a Charizard, and Ano had reached level 3, gaining new abilities. His fire breath was more powerful, which made Lin very pleased. He even invited Ano to go out and explore the world. After that, Lin was transported back to his world, taking Ano with him. At that very moment, a man with a black dragon sensed Ano's presence. He was intrigued because he had detected a dragon outside the Rift Valley. He then opened his eyes and began observing the surroundings. The fire dragon seemed excited, as the place was much larger than the ranch. He suggested they fly to explore the area. While interacting with Ano, Lin decided that since he couldn't get rid of the system, he would use its resources to the fullest. Lin decided to raise his dragons to become a more powerful mage. But then, an arrow nearly hit them. He thought it was the work of dragon hunters, but upon further investigation, he discovered it was an ambush. He also heard Jack shouting for help. Jack had been captured along with 2 guards and was surrounded by snakes. The boy had gone out in search of food while his master was busy training. He spotted a caravan while walking, but suddenly, a group of men appeared, defeating the guards protecting the caravan and capturing Jack. Those who tried to flee or resist were bitten by the snakes and ended up turning into corpses. The leader of the caravan tried to plead for his life with the thieves, but it was in vain. The chief of the thieves decided to continue the slaughter. Jack thought he would no longer be able to serve Lin, as he was about to die. However, before the snake could bite him, a fireball appeared and burned the snakes, freeing Jack. Someone descended from the sky and stepped onto the ground beside him. It was Lin. Jack was immensely relieved to see his master, but he soon realized there was an even bigger problem. The number of thieves was too large. Some of the thieves were frightened by the fireball Lin had cast, believing him to be at least a 3rd-tier mage. The leader of the thieves, however, assured his men there was no need to fear, as he himself was a 3rd-tier knight. He knew he had the advantage in close combat, since mages need to chant spells before attacking. Lin was aware of this and did his best to dodge the attacks, but the thief was very fast, proving himself to be a 3rd-tier knight. One of the strikes hit Lin directly, causing significant damage. Despite the pain, Lin stood up but realized he couldn't keep dodging forever. He began to chant a spell, which gave the knight another opportunity to attack. The chief of the thieves mocked Lin, throwing him against a rock, saying that mages would never be a match for knights. Even after all these blows, Lin was still conscious. At that moment, the system appeared and informed Lin that, since he was in combat, the dragon's magic would now synchronize with him. This would allow Lin to use Ano's abilities, such as Shield, Claw, Bite, and the ability to cast fireballs instantly. Lin remembered these abilities because they were the same as Ano's. The system confirmed that he could indeed use these spells. While Lin was busy synchronizing, the knight hit him with another kick to the face. The leader of the thieves had had enough fun and decided to finish Lin off. But just as he was about to be cut down, Lin managed to activate the synchronization system. He then spun his body and unleashed the instant fireball ability. The chief of the thieves recoiled. His sword was melted by Lin's spell, and the situation changed. The primary disadvantage of mages had disappeared. Lin could now cast spells without needing to chant them at length. The thieves quickly changed their attitude towards Lin, admiring his power. However, Lin was already tired and told them to leave. The leader of the caravan, Lucas, approached Lin and thanked him for saving them. He then showed Lin a mysterious object they had found along the way and offered it as a token of gratitude. Lucas removed the cloth covering the object and revealed a maiden. Lin immediately recognized her features. The young woman, with her pointed ears, was clearly an elf. Lucas boasted, saying that no man could resist her charms, but Lin didn't see the situation the same way. He was furious. Lucas suggested that Lin not hold back and told him how they had captured the elf. They found her on a battlefield where mercenaries fought each other to capture her. Lucas mentioned that the elf could be sold for 1,000,000 gold and seized the opportunity to suggest that Lin join them, knowing the protagonist's power would be valuable to their business. Lucas planned to hire even stronger men to expand his operations. Lin held the cage where the elf was imprisoned and thanked Lucas for the offer, but then cast a fire spell on the cage, burning the rope and freeing the elf. Lucas tried to stop Lin, but it was already too late. The protagonist was outraged to see that this man treated life as a commodity. Lucas was terrified and tried to flee, but Lin launched a small fireball at him, making him run for his life. The guards accompanying Lucas didn't even attempt to confront Lin and also fled. As for Lin, he extended his hand to the elf, but she was still frightened and didn't know what to do. Lin assured her that he was there to help, and she finally trusted him. The elf thanked him for rescuing her from those men. Lin introduced himself and asked her name, but the elf, embarrassed and impressed by Lin's chivalry, hid her face. He said she didn't need to answer if she didn't want to. As he was about to walk away, the elf finally shouted her name, Nick. Nick was afraid that by revealing her name to Lin, he would abandon her. After that, they returned to the carriage, where Jack was preparing a meal. Nick, the elf, was starving and devoured almost all the food, but Lin didn't mind. He was pleased to be able to help Nick. He then asked why she chose to stay with them, even though she had the chance to return to her clan. Nick explained that she couldn't go back. She was too mischievous and had broken the elves' rule of not getting involved with humans. When she returned home, she found that her base had already been discovered by adventurers and that her clan had fled. She tried to hide to avoid being captured, but the guards found and chased her. Despite her attempts to escape, Nick was captured. Lin understood the trauma this had caused Nick and asked why she wasn't afraid of him, even though he was human. Nick replied that he was different from other humans. After all, he had saved her. This made her look at Lin with admiration. Lin then allowed her to stay with him while they searched for clues about the whereabouts of her clan. He also explained that he was traveling to study magic at an academy. Lin asked Nick if she could pretend to be his servant to avoid suspicion. Nick's expression changed when she heard the word servant, and she tried to hide her embarrassment. Lin panicked, not wanting her to misunderstand. After explaining the situation better, Nick finally agreed. Lin then left her alone and stepped out of the carriage. Little Jack asked his master why he was going to sleep outside. He thought his master was planning something with the elf. After a few days, Lin's carriage finally arrived at the academy. The system appeared and gave Lin a new task. He should explore the academy to unlock the water dragon egg. When Lin learned that he was about to encounter other dragons, his expression became serious. The system explained that the more dragons he acquired, the more powerful he would become. The system also showed Lin's current status as a farmer. He was a first-tier mage and, so far, had only one dragon. Additionally, it revealed that there are 6 types of dragon eggs: fire, water, wind, earth, light, and darkness. If Lin managed to gather all these eggs, he would master all the magic associated with them. This further motivated Lin, who quickly entered the academy, but not before bidding farewell to Jack and Nick. Upon entering the academy, Lin was impressed by the sophistication of the place. He saw a delivery service where the vehicle was a broom. students excited to study, and various activities in progress. If you like this video, please subscribe, leave a like and comment for the next part.